All right, y'all, as you know, the research paper is the big capstone assignment for English 102, and we are going to scaffold that out or chunk that out into smaller sections. We start with the problematic question, and I'm making this video as a little accompaniment to next week's written assignment, your DBQ3 post on the problematic question, which also is the kind of introduction to your research paper assignment. So from the syllabus, and this is what you will write about for your discussion board next week, so please obviously watch this video before you write that, but I'll read through the description from the syllabus. The problematic question is a short 200, you can even go up to 250 words if you want, summary of the problem that you think you might like to address in your final research paper. Problematic questions are questions that genuinely interest and puzzle you. They should not be questions that have a simple yes or no answer. They should not be something that you already have made your mind up about. They must be specific enough that you will be able to make the argument and answer them within 8 to 10 pages. Now, for many of you, 8 to 10 pages probably sounds quite long, but it is in fact not. It's double-spaced. There are very few sincerely problematic questions that you can investigate exhaustively within 10 pages. So you'd be surprised how much traction you can get, how many pages you can get out of a topic. This is your chance to get feedback on your idea before you delve too deeply into it. However, you will need to do some research before you can write this document. For ideas on brainstorming problematic questions, review Table 1.1 in the Allen and Bacon Guide to Writing on page 6 if you have the physical book. What I mean by do some research, you go on the internet, do some research, go to Google Scholar. If you are familiar with the library databases, I would suggest that you do that as well, although we'll address that later in the semester. So for where you are right now, what I'm asking you to do is to think about what you're interested in. There's something that sincerely interests, troubles you, that you're curious to know more about, because curiosity will drive the project and make it less of a chore than if it's something that you think I'm interested in or you think you should be interested in. Start with something that you care about, and then think about a problem related to that. What I mean by a problem is what is troubling about it? What is this unanswered question you have? What's something that you've heard multiple different viewpoints about? That's something that's unsettled, or that open to further interrogation about this particular issue. Then you want to think about an audience or audiences. That is, are there people out there or groups of people out there who will be interested in this research? If you can't think of a potential audience, or if your audience is, just general everyday readers, then you probably don't have a really interesting question. But if you can actually imagine some folks sitting down and reading your paper, being interested in having a conversation about its topic, then that's a clue that your problem is real and that you're ready to go to the next step. And then what you need to do is start to find some sources, right? Ideally, there will be some disagreement about the topic, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So good topics have no easy answer. A naysayer can disagree with you or argue against you if they so desire, i.e., this is arguable. It's worth arguing over. The good topic is also important to more than one audience, i.e., it's worth saying. It's relatively local or specific. It's doable in 8 to 10 pages, and it's supportable with academic research. So I'm asking you, basically, a good topic allows you to go through each of these steps, right? Not easily answerable. Somebody's going to disagree. It's important to lots of folks, and it's doable within the page range outlined by the course and by the university. Poor topics, on the other hand, often investigate moral or belief-based issues. These are issues like abortion, school uniforms, COVID masks. I'm saying that these are no-go topics, not because they're unimportant, not that you shouldn't care about them deeply. You can and should. But I'm saying that it's hard to make a logical, informed argument about them because we all tend to have pretty entrenched beliefs about these things, right? Abortion, for example, often comes down to people believe that it's either a choice issue or it's a right of life. And where you fall on that spectrum is completely up to you. Both are, in my opinion, valid ways to think about the issue. But I'm not going to convince somebody who's on the other side of the debate with a logical argument necessarily, because it's much more of a belief-based issue. COVID masks, school uniforms, things like that fall into the same category. So we're going to avoid those issues. We're going to avoid moral or belief-based issues because belief is personal. Belief is something that's really outside of the realm of argument because you're entitled to your beliefs. Everybody is, and that's part of just part of being a human, I think. So a core topic also is an issue that's been explored by many before. You'll also notice that there's not a lot new to say about school uniforms, for example. A core topic is also an issue about which you already have a strong belief. When you already have a strong belief, it leads to relatively inductive thinking rather than deductive thinking. That is, you encounter research and try to make it fit your narrative rather than being open or deductive, being open to possibilities that emerge as you start to explore and research. So as you start brainstorming, I tell you should keep it manageable. And here's some ways that you might do that. If you're somebody who's broadly interested in the environment, that's a great place to start. It can be super broad by that, but you'll need to narrow it. And you might try to narrow it by a geographical area. What environmental issues or which environmental issues are most important in the southwestern U.S., which are most important in Kentucky, which are most important in Louisville. By culture, right? How would a Navajo worldview think about the environment? Or by time frame, right? What are the most prominent environmental issues in the last 10 years? By discipline. How does environmental awareness affect business practices? Or by population group. What are the effects of air pollution on senior citizens? All these are ways to take something broad like the environment and make it narrow enough to work for an 8 to 10 page paper. So if you start out with an interest, a great interest of mine is food. If I'm not eating, I'm actively thinking about it. So I start with food, and if I'm brainstorming out, I might think about dieting, which is obviously related to the previous problem I was outlining. And I may think about categories. If you're walking through the supermarket, you see things like farm fresh, cage free. No one knows what that means. Maybe you do. I don't. You might think about also supplements. And then if you use this kind of brainstorming strategy, you start out with something very broad like food, it can lead naturally to different, more refined, smaller areas, right? And from dieting, you might go to different trends in diet. I don't know what's popular now. No carb, all carb, who knows? Categories, farm fresh, cage free, they generally cost more. Are there benefits to that? I'm not quite sure. Think about supplements. How are they regulated? What does it mean when a certain vitamin brand says they're regulated and others don't? So if I'm going to write a research paper, I might start with the one in the middle, right? These categories, these farm fresh, cage free. Say, I really don't know what that means, so I'm going to chase that down and try to figure it out. So in posing that questions, I might start, with food, with different categories. What are the costs of these specialty foods? Are there differences between standard and non-standard types of meats, for example? Standard types of meat production in the U.S. are also called battery cage, and the non-standard, things like grass-fed, etc. Are there discernible nutritional differences between these types of meat? What kind of regulations exist about meat types? Who decides what gets called organic, what doesn't? Are there ethical problems at stake here? I.e., should we treat animals differently than they're often treated in mass farming? And does the increased cost of various types of meats justify the ethical or nutritional benefits? So I'm trying to show you how I started off with something as broad as food and ended up with something relatively specific, like does the increased cost of the various types of meat justify these benefits, right? So as you write your post, I'd encourage you to really think along these lines. And if I were starting with a question like, do the increased costs of these meats justify their benefits, I might go through a who, what, where, why. I've got the what in the question, but why is this issue important? What makes it important? To whom? Right? Who cares about this? What's the audience? And you might even get specific here. Was this something that U of L should care about? Maybe in its dining halls, for example. Where is this important? Another thing, is this a U of L specific issue? Is it more pressing in urban spaces than non-urban spaces? Is it more pressing in certain economically depressed communities than not? And how will this research create an impact, and with whom? Right? So I encourage you to think through all these questions as you're coming up with your problematic question. And then when you come to actually writing the post, please do review the syllabus and try to be as focused as you can, understanding that you're going to get feedback from me and your peers, and you're going to rewrite this and expand it for the next week. All right, y'all, hope this was useful. I'll talk to you again soon.